I think the lessons that TfL could teach the rest of the country, I mean, there are some practical things, about how to buy things and build things.
Yeah.
But I think it's this layer of integration. The more integration you can get, the greater you can join up planning across different areas of public policy, the better. And that comes down to money. So on the kind of strategic level, that transport fits in with land use planning. It means that transport has access to the funds that can be raised through things like SIL and other forms of land value capture. So when transport increases land value and improves the economic use of geographical areas, we can actually capture some of that value to reinvest, to pay down borrowing.
Yep.
It's part of the Crossrail funding package. The Northern Line extension is entirely funded through these sorts of things. So, and then actually when you talk about transport integration, we have a nationalised bus service. It's run by 20 private companies, but under contract to us, and we collect all the fare box. And that fare box is through the Oyster system, and it's the same fare box where we collect, from which tube fares goes into. And we can spend money collectively. I mean, I think that part of London's success is based on the success of the other cities in the United Kingdom. London is the biggest city in the UK. It is at the moment the most economically successful. But actually we could be even more successful with more successful sister cities. And I think the continental model, where actually you have a network of big cities that work together and support each other, is something that the UK government should follow. So we'd like those cities to thrive just as London is thriving. And equally, there's some, nobody has really examined the possibility of joint procurement, joint, purchasing of one form or another, looking at how we might work together to exploit the bond market for borrowing, for example.
Yeah.
In TfL alone, we've got single contract for escalators. It saved us 47% on the cost of escalators. We are not the only transport authority that needs escalators. No. We could probably save even more on buying escalators if we work with Manchester and Birmingham and Leeds and others. And they in turn could actually benefit from our purchasing power as well. There's a kind of win-win there. So we'd like to see the other cities have very similar structures to us, because actually there's all sorts of areas of cooperation. And of course, we've done quite a number of things. We've made the mistakes actually. We've developed new ticketing systems, which didn't always go smoothly. We look back on the Oyster and we think, well, what a marvellous system, but actually it had a few glitches along the way. There's a whole series of things. Our Jubilee line extension wasn't great, but the East London line was under budget and ahead of schedule. We can all, we can share our expertise, we can share some of our hard lessons. And importantly as well, just getting the markets used to lending money to organisations like us helps us. We're all very aware of how little cities like London or Manchester or Birmingham can keep from the income that they generate themselves. London is less than 10%, around about 7%. Comparable cities like New York, it's way into the sort of 40 or so percent. The central government needs to think about simply fiscal devolution, letting cities benefit from the proceeds of their own growth so they can invest in more growth. It's a kind of virtuous circle. London is always showing the way. But there is a positive role that central government can play. I think that's best exemplified with the Northern Line extension. The Northern Line extension is a £1 billion project, and not a penny is coming from central government. We're getting no grant in aid for it. All of it's being raised either through borrowing against future fare revenue or against land value uplift in one form or another. But the government is playing an important role in that. They're actually effectively guaranteeing the loans. And actually they take a huge amount of risk out, they enable low interest rates, they enable it to be a very attractive lending proposition, and they provide a degree of security. So effectively the government, by backing it, providing that background guarantee, are facilitating. And that's a really important role that central government can play. At the moment, if you look at what happens in a spending round, it's actually rather kind of an abrasive competitive process. We're all having to fight for a larger slice of a relatively small and shrinking cake. Actually, the cake can be bigger. The cake doesn't require a huge amount of additional income tax or corporation tax or exchequer funding. That cake can be expanded simply by actually tapping into the growth potential of our cities. And that's where future growth will come from. And central government should actually step back, facilitate it, de-risk it, create the right environment for that growth and that investment. And at the moment, they're kind of killing it a bit. They're a sort of deadening force. and actually, and one of the things which is even worse is they have a tendency to set cities against each other. And we're still having to deal with a debate about transport investment, which is still very north versus south. It should be north and south.
Yes.
It's a really unhelpful place to be, and that is actually created by the fiscal and the funding competition that we all have to go through every time there's a comprehensive spending round, every time there's a general election.